Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Matt Lateplo, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from Patriot Battery Metals, Inc. Please note you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Ken Brinsden, CEO, President, and Director of the OTCQX Best 50 company, Patriot Battery Metals, Inc., which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol PMETF, on the TSX under the symbol PMET, and on the ASX under the symbol PMT. Welcome, Ken.
Pleasure to be with you, Matt. Thanks very much for the chance to participate, and a warm welcome, good day, good evening to all those participating online. It's really nice to be with you, and looking forward to sharing some more information about Patriot, our activities, and hopefully leaving you with the impression of the significance of the Corvette discovery that sits within Patriot Battery Metals lithium raw materials portfolio. And included is some presentation materials that I'll take you through today, not to give you death by PowerPoint, but to target some key slides and information that I think is pertinent to investment in Patriot and our progress over the coming years. Going through the slides, I'll just point you to our disclaimers. They're the usual disclaimers that you'll see for every company presenting, I'm sure, and they're available online. So Patriot Battery Metals made a significant discovery in Quebec, in Canada, and the James Bay region, with first drilling actually very late 2020, early 2021. And what's emerged in the period of time since is a globally significant discovery. It's in the hard rock category of the lithium raw materials supply base. So for those of you that may not be completely familiar with lithium raw materials, you can source your lithium from multiple sources, the big two being hard rock resources globally and from brine sources of supply. So our project fits within the hard rock supply base. And what's important about what's been discovered by Patriot at Corvette is a combination of factors, but at a very high level, what it starts with is some pretty amazing geology that I'll reflect on during the course of the presentation. And what it supports is a combination of scale and quality. And in lithium raw materials, both scale and quality, they're really important points of difference. And at Corvette, even in our first resource, being the Maiden Resource from August 2023, well over 100 million tonnes discovered, which puts it in the category of being one of the top 10 globally, but actually the largest in the Americas of the hard rock resources. Secondly, it's in Quebec, and Quebec, Canada, fantastic place to be building a mine. I'll describe what we expect to unfold in respect of our project approvals process and subsequent development. Lastly, well, the very fact that the project is located in North America, that's also a really important point of difference, because North America is going to be a very significant source of lithium raw material demand. Not so much today, but over the balance of the decade, our expectation is that significant raw material demand will emerge in both North America, but also in Europe, for which Quebec in Canada and our Corvette project is ideally placed. Going forward, you can see that the build of lithium-ion battery facilities, or so-called gigafactories, is already underway. And in my experience, having been involved in the lithium game for quite some time now, the US is heading down a very similar path to that pioneered by China. China is already the world's largest lithium raw material demand base. But my expectation is that the US and Europe combined will ultimately be, if not of equivalent scale, certainly rivaling their capacity in China. So that build, as I said, is already underway. In this slide we're presenting here, you can see the factories that are already under construction. But I think we can safely say that there's a disconnect between the speed with which you can develop a chemical facility that supports batteries downstream, or the cell making capacity itself, and the lithium raw material supply base that ultimately is required to support those facilities. The disconnect is really in time. You can build your cell making capacity or your chemical capacity in approximately 2 to 3 years, but to produce the lithium raw material, it takes a lot longer to build out the mine capacity. The combination of the discovery, the drill out, the approvals process, and then subsequently the build and commissioning would typically be measured globally in the order of about 5 to 10 years worth of development. And it's that disconnect that represents a bit of a problem in the supply base for lithium raw materials. And one of the reasons why I think we can be confident about long-run price support for lithium raw materials. So plenty of demand to come. I alluded to scale. Well, in fact, here we're looking at global scale. So already, even with our maiden resource, with many, many meters drilled subsequently, one of the world's top 10 resources. So significant in scale, as proven by the scale of hard rock resources in the Americas. We are already the largest, but with plenty more potential. And what gives us that faith and confidence in the continued growth in the underlying resource base, in short, on the assumption we keep drilling, we will continue to keep growing the resource base. That seems obvious. It's pretty amazing geology. Here we're looking at our location. So Quebec in Canada, central Quebec, an area known as the James Bay region, really well supported by existing infrastructure. So in our case, approximately 20 kilometres from significant haul road, being the Trans-Taiga Highway, and then also significant power infrastructure, being the Hydro-Quebec scheme. The combination of the Hydro-Quebec scheme, the infrastructure that's been developed, obviously the power stations themselves, the road access, that all represents key steps forward for the development of a subsequent mine. And we'll be able to leverage that infrastructure as we think about development of the mine during the next approximately 4 years. So a really important element. There's a bigger picture view about what James Bay means from an approvals point of view as well. The history and the creation of the treaty between the Cree Nation and the province of Quebec simplifies the combination of the approval and relations with the Cree for the purpose of the approval of the mine over time. It's one of the clearest paths forward for mine development in Canada as a whole. So Canada's already a good jurisdiction from a mining point of view, but Quebec and the James Bay region, another key link in the chain for the subsequent development of the Corvette project. We're going to drill into the geology in a little bit more detail, and apologies in advance if this gets a little bit technical, but it's well worth explaining because it motivates us and the significance of the discovery that's underway. We have 50 kilometres, approximately 50 kilometres of the key greenstone belt. We were a first mover in the James Bay region in respect of lithium. And Blair Way, our Chief Operating Officer, and his team did an amazing job consolidating that land package. And the first of the discoveries, being CV5, is just a small fraction of the entire portfolio. So let's say roughly 5 kilometres at CV5 of a trend that demonstrates spodumene occurrence, spodumene being the host of the lithium raw material, pretty much all the way along that 50 kilometre belt. So lots more exploration to be done, and already some new discoveries emerging beyond CV5, which is where the first resource exists, 109 million tonnes. So plenty more work to be done. Why is it so good? Well, having worked on hard rock projects globally, but in particular in Western Australia, historically I was involved in Pilbara Minerals' Pilgangoora project. There is no doubt in my mind that Patriot's Corvette discovery rivals the largest of the discoveries in Western Australia. It's very open geology. The spodumene host is pretty incredible in its structure. Very, very large scale crystals and uniformly larger, and therefore supporting high rates of recovery and high grade. Overall, the entire resource, maiden resource, about 1.45% lithia, which puts it up there in global rankings, but also some very, very high grade subsets of the resource. The first of those we've discovered is called the Nova zone within CV5, and it hosts lithia contents well north of 2%. So yeah, the combination of those things, scale, crystal structure and grade, leads to the definition of a very fertile system, which we would expect to deliver many, many more tonnes over time. I mentioned the crystal structure. This is a really important element for the subsequent recovery of your lithium raw material, or spodumene concentrate as it's called. The large crystal structure motivates the use of dense media separation, and dense media separation is the simplest of the recovery tools and the lowest cost, that ultimately creates a high recovery and low cost hard rock recovery operation for spodumene concentrate. So in all the work that's been done around metallurgical test work and lab and pilot scale test work, we've achieved high recoveries with just simple dense media separation. And what it comes down to is that aforementioned larger crystal structure, but universally larger crystal structure. So hence the support for high rates of recovery. The maiden resource came out in August last year. We've been very, very active with drilling since, and in fact that's led to a combination of growth in the strike extent of the CV5 discovery, but also further drilling at another location known as CV13 and CV9, both of which will continue to demonstrate the prospectivity of the broader trend at Corvette beyond CV5. But in any case, already a very, very good start with a significant maiden resource. And we've also been infilling this maiden resource at CV5, both growing the resource, but also infilling the resource, and thereby upgrading the resource when we announce that during the September quarter, which will support the subsequent feasibility studies, for which much of the work is already underway. So a combination of growth in the resource during the course of this year and an upgrade to the resource classification, supporting the subsequent feasibility studies. In the knowledge that this is one of the more significant discoveries globally, we've been able to attract some significant partners. Albemarle, one of the global leaders, but in particular in the Western world, of the chemical conversion process, so the conversion of the concentrates from a future mining operation like that proposed at Corvette into the value-added chemicals that ultimately make their way into lithium-ion batteries. So Albemarle has acknowledged the significance of the Corvette discovery and the work that Patriot has underway in the form of a minority investment. And in parallel, both Patriot and Albemarle, we've been working together on a joint project that considers the interconnection between the significant discovery at Corvette and the development of the chemical facilities that will ultimately support the raw material supply process. So yeah, that's all underway, and a very important part of our future development strategy for the Corvette project. Yeah, so we'll continue to engage with everyone downstream, but in particular Albemarle, to support the subsequent development of the mine at Corvette. We often get queried about the approvals process, and I want to say that being in Quebec, a steeped history of mining in Quebec, very diverse mining interests, and many mines approved, including those recently, and then combined with the effect of the James Bay region, where you have just the Cree, so the Cree as a sole development partner, if you like, in the progress of your mine. It means that the interplay between First Nations and the mining company with a sophisticated partnership is about as good as it gets in Canada. And by my observation, as it relates to sort of the global footprint in mine approvals, Quebec and James Bay is about as good as it gets for the purpose of mine development. Our expectation is that with our approvals already underway, including the engagement with both the Cree and the provincial government, means that we can commence construction in just under 4 years' time. There's not that many places around the world where you can do that, and it feels like that is a big tick in the box as it relates to both Patriot and our Corvette project's development. So this is what it looks like over time. We've been very, very active in drilling. Huge number of rigs active at site as we solidify the maiden discovery that I previously described at CV5, the infill drilling that supports the balance of the economic and engineering studies, the feasibilities of which are underway. In parallel, we've commenced the approvals process. So that starts with the what's called the submission of the project description to both the Cree and the Quebec provincial government. That work and assessment's been part of engagement backwards and forwards with both the Cree and the provincial government, and that's progressing as we would expect. It'll all culminate in the parallel submission of our ESIA, being the key approvals document, and the parallel feasibility study for the subsequent approvals process, facilitating construction from late 2027 and production commissioning in the second half of 2028. So in summary, Quebec and the James Bay region, it is about as good as it gets as it relates to the approvals process. So with all of that as a backdrop, we think it's compelling, the story that has both growth, new discovery, because we fully expect to be doing a lot more drilling along the Corvette trend, beyond our CV5 discovery and first resource, all of which means that the Corvette project becomes critical to underwriting raw material supply for the growth that's emerging in North America and in Europe, both of which markets should be readily accessible for the Corvette raw materials supply base. So we're looking forward to continuing to demonstrate the economic merit in CV5, continuing to deliver in respect of resource growth and significant potential for new discoveries on the Corvette trend as we continue to progress the company in the coming months and years. For those of you that may not be familiar to the background of the Patriot story, well funded with significant funds available to continue the project's development through the feasibility studies, and a tight share register with significant investment in both Canada and Australia. We have a fantastic team, and I've really enjoyed working with them in the last couple of years, but in particular during the course of 2024. I've moved from Australia to Montreal to continue to support the project's progress. As you'd imagine, with the project moving from being just an exploration story now to being a development story, we will continue to grow the team and the presence here in Quebec as we progress the project's development. But for each of the key executives, deep and steeped experience in mine project exploration, development and corporate development, each of which will be key elements to the Patriot story from here. Okay, that's it in terms of the formal presentation materials, but I can see there's plenty of questions to work our way through. So I'll happily do that now. Thank you everyone for your participation so far. Moving to question number 1. How do you visualize Patriot in 10 years from now? It's a really good question. My prior experience was in the development of Pilbara Minerals and their Pilgangoora discovery from an exploration play with a small resource to ultimately becoming, at the time I left, an ASX 100 company and the world's second largest hard rock lithium raw material base, supply base, and the development that went on from within the company was pretty incredible. Tens of millions market cap to $10 to $15 billion market cap. All of that is possible on the back of a remarkable discovery, and that's definitely what Pilgangoora became. Started with its maiden resource of approximately 15 to 20 million tonnes and grew to today it's 400 million tonnes plus. There are many characteristics that I have seen that are familiar to me based on that experience at the Corvette discovery that Patriot has made. It's remarkable geology. It is going to deliver a lot more tonnes in the circumstance where we keep drilling. And in so doing, it can become a mine of scale. But in many respects, Corvette is better than a lot of other global resources. And it's better because of the combination of the geology, the scale, the large crystal structure, and the recovery characteristics that motivate a successful hard rock mine. Those characteristics are at Corvette in spades. So what does that turn into? Well, my objective would be to ensure that Corvette also becomes a globally significant lithium hard rock raw material project. And can that happen within 10 years? Well, yeah, my observation would be that it can and it should, given that period of time. So I'm looking forward to being a part of it. Going to question number 2, how significant is the strategic investment in Patriot? Well, again, I want to say that this is also very significant because having the likes of Albemarle, one of the global leaders in lithium chemicals and the value-added lithium chemicals process, it means that they see characteristics in Corvette that justify their investment and their future work with Patriot to ultimately connect a significant mining operation with high quality characteristics to the downstream chemical facilities, but in particular where you're doing that off a North American base. So I want to say that having that endorsement from Albemarle is a significant step for the company and demonstrates the value in the Corvette discovery. Okay, question number 3. How do you see James Bay in 10 years from now? Well, James Bay is also a pretty remarkable place. The very fact that there's a treaty that defines the land use in partnership with the Cree, the developers themselves, like Patriot, and the provincial government, means that you have a very, very clear pathway on the proviso that you're being a responsible company, and of course I would contend that Patriot is, and hopefully we are going to be a good partner to the Cree, implies that there will be more development in the James Bay region. It's another significant hard rock lithium supply base in the same way that I've observed Western Australia becoming a key supplier to North Asia, but in particular China. So I think the James Bay region has that same potential, but in particular focused on the North American or the emergence of the North American demand story. So yeah, to me that's really important. Question number 4. Are you eligible for any government incentives for the Corvette project? Well, I think it's fair to say that we've already been taking advantage of some of those incentives. So many of you will be familiar with the flow through share schemes that allows you to double down on direct expenditure at the, on the ground in the discovery. We've been taking advantage of those flow through share schemes and raising money at significant premiums, typically 100% premium plus, for the purpose of the raising where the money is being spent on the ground. So it's already the case that we're taking advantage of some of those incentives, and of course there's others, especially as you get closer to development. Quebec has demonstrated a really strong desire, and I'm really pleased to see this underway, to interconnect the supply chain in Quebec and create the raw material supply base, the value-added chemicals, right through to cell manufacturing, and to be doing it off a Quebec base. And they've been prepared to put their money where their mouth is and actually support the development of these projects. So whilst there's no guarantee, I think there's already been a demonstrated track record that that's exactly what Quebec and Canada want to achieve. So that's part 1. Part 2 is the strategy for North America more broadly, where there is an imperative to differentiate the supply chain from China. China is such a dominant player in the industry, and the North American demand and as it emerges, it's increasingly important that it differentiates itself from that China supply base, means that there will be more incentive to ensure that alternate supply base and a domestic supply base emerges. This is a really important point, and one of the reasons why I think Patriot can be confident in our ability to receive support from a combination of governments and supply chain participants to ensure this alternate supply base gets up. Question number 5. How many big players will be involved in 10 to 15 years? For those of you that have been interested observers of the battery raw materials space, you'll have come to appreciate the growth that's emerged, and especially in the last decade. The compound growth in especially lithium raw materials has been in the order of about 20 to 35% per annum. And in fact, off a 2023 supply base, it's expected that the industry will still grow 3 times between 2023 and 2030. Now, with that sort of demand growth, it is going to be very difficult for the raw material supply base to keep up. And that's why you will likely continue to see price spikes emerge in the industry, because there will be disconnects between the available supply and the emerging demand. I think the implication out of all that is that longer run pricing is higher than typically is the consensus today. And especially in the current environment where there is a bit of weakness due to a combination of destocking in China and slightly lesser global demand. But in the end, I think price will be the key determinant, and the margins that emerge in the industry will attract bigger players, and there will likely be consolidation. Okay, question number 6, probably got time for one more. What is, in your opinion, the largest risk for the Corvette play? Okay, well, I mean, the 2 things that I think deserve a lot of attention are, of course, the approvals process, because that is the critical path. And what that means is that we should be diligent, we should be focused, we should be doing high quality work, and we should be a true partner to the CRE. And in so doing, we can manage the approvals process to ensure that we hit our targets. Lastly, being a project of massive scale, it means that the best solution is to connect to North American chemical initiatives. And this is a really important part of our sort of parallel developments project, obviously the Corvette project itself, but in parallel having sensible and commercial solutions that interconnect the chemical capacity, the required chemical capacity in North America, to the future development of the Corvette project. Those two initiatives, they're probably the two most important things that I think about in motivating the further development of the company. Now, Matt, I'm thinking that I've used all my time, so really appreciate everyone's participation and look forward to any future follow-up that might emerge. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and look forward to